Some southern cities aren't struggling. They're collapsing. We're talking water systems so broken, residents can't even drink from their taps for years. Homes selling for $400 because nobody wants to live there anymore. Crime rates that make national headlines. 7 cities where infrastructure has failed, violence has exploded, and entire neighborhoods sit abandoned. Number 7. Monroe, Louisiana. Let's start with Monroe, a place where you've got about a 1 in 12 chance of becoming a crime victim. Every single day in this city, there's about 6 violent crimes and 14 property crimes happening. To put that in perspective, the assault rates here are comparable to what you'd see in Detroit. That's the kind of comparison nobody wants their city to be making. Things got so bad with housing that the federal government actually had to step in and help out. Monroe received $2 million through a Healthy Homes grant to remove serious health hazards from low-income homes: lead paint, mold, unsafe flooring, and other dangers. The fact that Washington had to step up says a lot about how unsafe much of the housing has become. Now, the Monroe Housing Authority is doing what it can, working on creating subsidized rental units, and they're also trying to develop affordable housing. But no matter how hard they work at it, there just aren't enough affordable places for people to live. The demand is absolutely overwhelming whatever problem they can manage to build, and honestly, there's no clear solution on the horizon. When you look at the bigger picture, it becomes pretty clear why things are so tough here. Close to a quarter of Monroe's residents are living in poverty, and the median income is around $35,000 a year. That puts Monroe among the poorest cities in Louisiana. This kind of economic hardship creates exactly the sort of environment where crimes can flourish, and where families are barely scraping by, just trying to make it through each day. Number 6. Bessemer, Alabama. Almost half the kids in Bessemer are growing up in poverty. Think about that for a second. The child poverty rate sits at 46.5%, meaning nearly 1 out of every 2 children here is growing up without basic resources, opportunities, or much hope for a different future. When you zoom out and look at the poverty rate across the whole city, it hits 30.7. What that means in real numbers is that out of Bessemer's roughly 25,000 residents, over 8,000 people are living in poverty. The median household income sits at just under $38,000. On top of all these economic challenges, crime is a serious problem in Bessemer. The violent crime rate sits at around 654 incidents per 100,000 people. What really set all this in motion was the collapse of Bessemer's industrial base, which created these concentrated areas of deep poverty that have become breeding grounds for crime. You've got abandoned buildings sitting empty in neighborhoods that are falling apart, which leaves people feeling unsafe in their own communities. If this breakdown is opening your eyes to southern cities that don't make the tourism brochures, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button and smash the notification bell so you never miss out on our deep dives. Now, let's get back to the countdown. Number 5. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Imagine losing everything you own, not just once, but twice in the span of 5 years. That's exactly what happened to people in Baton Rouge. Back in August of 2016, the city got hit with what they're calling a 1 in 1,000 year flood. We're talking about more than 48,000 buildings in East Baton Rouge Parish that got affected, with residential property damage alone adding up to around $1 billion. Thousands of people, including the mayor himself, had to scramble to find somewhere temporary to stay while they tried to salvage whatever they could from their homes. Then, just when people were starting to get back on their feet, it happened all over again in May of 2021. And then, just to make matters worse, FEMA pulled the plug on the funding. In 2025, they ended their Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program, which meant that more than $53 million in federal money for stormwater improvements just vanished. The geography of Baton Rouge doesn't do the city any favors either. Sitting in a low-lying area makes it extremely prone to floods. But if you're living in Baton Rouge, flooding isn't even the only thing you have to worry about. The city is also dealing with violent crime rates that go beyond 1,000 incidents per 100,000 residents. So, you've got this situation where people are constantly anxious, always wondering if their homes are going to flood again, or if they're going to get caught up in a crime. Number 4. Birmingham, Alabama. You know things are rough when a city has to tear down more than one building every single day just to keep up. That's exactly what's happening in Birmingham. Over the past 7 years, more than 2,400 structures have been demolished. In 2025 alone, 126 abandoned buildings were taken down. But these places aren't just empty buildings. They're dangerous. Abandoned homes catch fire easily, attract crime, and drag neighborhoods down. When it comes to crime, Birmingham is leading the entire state of Alabama, with 14.2 violent crimes and 52.6 property crimes for every 1,000 residents. The violent crime rate sits at about 1,682 incidents per 100,000 people, and in 2022, the city set a modern record with 144 homicides. Gang activity drives much of this violence, feeding into a larger cycle of poverty, poor education, and limited opportunity. You've got a poverty rate of almost 28%, schools that are seriously underfunded, high numbers of students dropping out, and gang activity that's so persistent that law enforcement just can't seem to get it under control. Number 3. Pine Bluff, Arkansas. This is the city where homes sell at tax auctions for as little as $400, cheaper than a used iPhone. That alone says everything about the economic collapse that's hit Pine Bluff. The problem is simple. Too few people to fill the homes that exist, and too many residents who can't afford to maintain the ones they have. Pine Bluff now carries titles no city wants. Arkansas's most dangerous city and America's fastest shrinking one, losing over 12% of its population between 2010 and 2020. Crime has become so common that many residents no longer feel safe in their own neighborhoods. The poverty rate sits at 25%, and the median household income hovers around $41,000, barely half the national average. What makes Pine Bluff's story so heartbreaking is knowing what it used to be. After World War II, it was one of the most prosperous areas in the Deep South. Rich farmland, 2 thriving paper mills, and plenty of good-paying jobs. But in the 1970s, those industries began to crumble. By the 2000s, the city was on life support. When the mills finally shut down, they took the town's entire economic foundation with them, leaving thousands without work or direction. Today, abandoned buildings dominate the landscape. Overgrown lots, collapsing structures, and decaying streets stretch across whole neighborhoods. Houses sell for as little as $400, yet few are buying, because what's left? No jobs, failing schools, sky-high crime, and a shrinking population with no real hope of revival. Number 2. Memphis, Tennessee. Here's a statistic that should really shake you. 1 in every 5 renters in Memphis gets evicted every single year. Between 2016 and 2019, there was an average of 31,633 eviction filings happening annually in Shelby County, which means roughly 20% of renters were facing the possibility of losing their homes each year. On top of the eviction crisis, Memphis is dealing with a severe shortage of affordable housing that's really putting people in impossible situations. Memphis has this interesting situation where there are actually more renters than homeowners living in the city, creating instability and disinvestment since fewer residents have long-term stakes in their neighborhoods. The public housing that exists is getting old and needs extensive renovation work, and there are thousands of residents who are going to have to deal with temporary relocation while repairs are being done under HUD's Rental Assistant Demonstration Program. Meanwhile, the city's infrastructure continues to crumble. As if housing insecurities weren't enough, Memphis has earned a grim reputation as one of America's most dangerous cities. The violent crime rate sits at about 2,501 incidents per 100,000 residents. Gang violence, carjackings, and theft are happening on a daily basis throughout the city. If you're living in Memphis, you've got about a 1 in 41 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime. For many residents, the fear isn't just about losing a home. It's about losing their sense of safety in the place they call home. Number 1. Jackson, Mississippi. At the very top of our list of places to avoid living in the South is Jackson, Mississippi, a city where unbelievably, in 2025, the water still doesn't work reliably. Residents can't count on clean water to drink, cook with, bathe in, or even flush their toilets. The crisis hit its breaking point in August 2022 when flooding overwhelmed O.B. Curtis Water Treatment Plant. But this didn't happen overnight. The system has been failing for years. Between 2017 and 2021, Jackson averaged 45 water line breaks per 100 miles each year and issued over 750 boil water notices. Fixing the system would cost around $2 billion, but there's no clear plan to fund it. An EPA investigation revealed chronic understaffing, broken meters, and massive water loss. About half the supply wasn't billed or even reaching homes. Lead contamination has been a recurring issue since 2016, with unsafe levels still showing up in tests. The city's infrastructure is now so weak that firefighters often struggle to get enough water pressure to battle flames. Jackson's economic struggles only worsen the crisis. Nearly 26% of residents live in poverty, with a median income of just over $26,000. Many can't afford home repairs or relocation, and entire neighborhoods are being abandoned. And if that weren't enough, Jackson faces soaring violence. 154 homicides in 1 year, or 76 per 100,000 residents, far higher than Chicago's rate. Police are overwhelmed, schools are failing, and basic services barely function. Jackson has become a haunting example of urban collapse, an American city where even clean running water is no longer guaranteed. So, after exploring 7 southern cities in crisis, what's the common thread? Collapsing infrastructure, economic decline, and shrinking populations. A vicious cycle that's hard to break. Which city shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this breakdown opened your eyes to the challenges facing the South, hit subscribe and tap the bell for even more deep dives. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.